Hello, my name is Stacy, and welcome to my digital narrative. Instead of boring you with biographical details or my philosophy as a person or a writer, what I would rather talk about is a story that I wrote in 2010. It's called Snakes in Maine, and it's actually the brainchild of my grandfather, Samuel Robert Tibbets. Papa is actually the reason that I'm a creative writer. He introduced me to storytelling, a knack that was passed down to my father, Milton, and then, of course, myself. It was kind of a family tradition and something that we all enjoyed growing up and even to this day. So Papa told stories. Some of these stories bordered on the fantastic, and others could be downright raunchy. On April 2nd of 2004, Papa died. It was sudden, it was unexpected, and it was a huge upset in the family. The patriarch was gone. He was actually the second grandfather that I had lost. My mother's father, Kenneth, had died the year previous on April 1st in 2003. And so it was kind of a tough period of time. After my grandfather died, my father was determined to cling to his memory. He began hoarding items that had this newly awakened sentimental value. Things that everyone else thought was junk and wanted to throw away became my dad's treasures. It's very sad, but it's also very touching. In 2008, my stepdad, Raymond, committed suicide, and it was another unexpected event in our family's lives. We had no idea that he had become so depressed that he would have done something so terrible, and it was just one of the most horrible things I've ever had to experience in my life. But it was an eye-opening experience, because it was then that I realized that if the thoughts and memories of a person aren't recorded when they're fresh in mind, that they can be lost forever. And when Raymond died, he took so many parts of my life with him. The stories that he used to tell me are only half remembered. The recipes he taught me, they're missing an ingredient or two. And it's because of this that I set about on a mission to record every aspect of my family's life, for fear of losing someone else before their contribution had been fully documented. And of course I started with my dad, because he was the one who Papa had given the gift of storytelling to. And he's the one that seems to appreciate delving back into the past, delving back into those memories, talking about things that happened, even if they are so insignificant that no one would ever in a million years dream of writing it down. But it's been an amazing experience, and I'm really glad that I've had the opportunity to do it. So in 2010, I really got into this project, and I started calling my dad up and picking his brain for every little bit of knowledge that he had in it. I asked him to tell me family tales, stories about his youth, anything about my grandparents or great-grandparents that no one else seems to remember or care about. And I began to transcribe them. And at first I was working on them as a transcription type project. I was taking it word for word as my dad said it, because my dad has a unique way of saying things, and he has a very unique accent, and I was using his dialect to write this. And then one day he told me a little story that his father, my grandfather, Papa Samuel, had told him many years ago. And it all kinds of transformed for me. I no longer had the urge to simply transcribe. I wanted to build upon it and turn it into something much more than it was.
Well, the only thing I can tell you is that it was Daddy that told me. And it was Mr. and Mrs. Cook's place right across the road from Grandma's. You know, right there, that was a little dirt road that goes down in there. There was an old rock, they had an old rock foundation underneath their house. Well, according to Daddy, back in 1957, they had a circus come to Lakehurst. And at that circus, when they was traveling down the road, they lost a crate of snakes off the back of it. Well, they didn't think that it was going to hurt anything because they figured that they would die over the winter. Well, that Mrs. Cook, and I remember when I was a kid, because she was a wicked nice old lady, she used to cook cookies and brownies and everything else for us, because we was living at Grandma's. And that must have been, when we lived up there, was in 1961. So from 57 to 61 we lived up there. So, but this was after that Daddy had told me the story. He said that she always complained about this snake, and she wouldn't leave the house because the snake was laying over her doorstep, and her husband thought that she was just, fussing about some little snake or something like that. Well, I guess a year or so later or whatever, after she had complained about the snake because she wouldn't leave the house, something happened and the husband had to stay home one day from work. And so he took and happened to be staying there all day or whatever, didn't feel good or whatever reason it was. And he happened to look out the window and there was a snake laying across the doorstep. And that house is, it was Abby's house, probably 20 feet. What back then they didn't go very big. And there was this goddamn freaking snake and it was laid right across the doorstep, went right from one end of the house to the other. And so he goes, gets this little 25 caliber pistol and he shoots the snake. And he tells his wife that it was all right for her to go outdoors. She says, the hell it is. She says, there's two of them. She says, well, they got digging around down inside of the old rock foundation there. And sure enough, there was the second snake. And it was in that foundation. They shot it inside of the foundation. Now, that's the type of snake. I don't know what it was, but all I can tell you is that they lost a crate of snakes. That's what Daddy took.